You need to continue healing as you make the decision to heal, as you make the decision to face the things that feel so incredibly frightening, because the trauma makes it feel insurmountable, and the lack of safety that you felt during that time, the trauma. And as you're describing it, it's exactly what happens. Most people wouldn't think that a regular junior high experience with some bullying isn't going to be anything out of the ordinary. That's what we all go through. But as you're talking about it, I can feel and see and know that those triggers, those things inside of you still exist. Doesn't mean you haven't resolved, or that you haven't moved on, or that you haven't created safety. It's those triggers that come up. And in explaining this, it's really beautiful to watch you talk about something that I know you've worked on. I've worked on with you. It's beautiful, and yet your humanness shows in this really beautiful way that you're going to tell this story. And so I just want to say, I just love that, because that's how people connect with each other. And so it's not that you haven't worked on this or whatever. You're having emotions because you're human, and it's just so beautiful. And this is what trauma does, and to us for a lifetime.
Right.
So I'm sorry, I didn't take away, but I just really wanted to point that out. I appreciate you sharing this.
Of course. And the other thing that I just thought of is actually during the retreat, I remember getting to a point where I don't remember if it was like, I think we started the evening, showed up one day, and then that evening we started doing the work. And then I think mid-morning, I remember there was a point after doing a bunch of other exercises, I got to a point where I started remembering things that I just didn't remember. They were just gone. They were gone. They were memories that I started remembering, and things. And I remember when I mentioned that to you, you said, that's now we're getting into the work, which you hear a lot of people say, doing the work, you got to do the work, you got to do the work, you got to do the work. That's kind of something that you hear a lot of people say, oh, you got to do the work. And that was the very first time I think I had ever really clearly understood, oh, now I'm doing the work. And
your body starts working for you when you're deciding, I'm ready to do it, whatever it is. And so the really beautiful part of it is what you're talking about that happens is your body's like, oh, you're ready to do it. And this is a safe place. So let me give you information that you need to do the work.
Right. It's like getting to a place where the walls are down, completely vulnerable. I'm safe.
Yeah.
I'm safe. And so we go through and we do, I think it's 2.5 days, right? 2.5 days of just hardcore work, and maybe 3 days. I don't know. I don't even remember how many days. There was a lot of stuff that I learned. I looked at some of my patterns. There are a lot of things I looked at, but let's go back to the story. So after the retreat, I went hiking in the Sawtooth Mountains with my friend Glenn, and we went hiking. And then I remember coming back into Idaho, downtown Idaho. My flight was on Wednesday. Glenn's flight was on Tuesday. So remember, one of the things that I'd worked through, one of the things I'd realized was that traumatic period of time living in Oxnard. So Glenn and I go on this hike, Sawtooth Mountains. It's a 10-hour hike. It's hardcore. It's amazing. It's beautiful. And then Glenn's flight's on Tuesday. My flight's on Wednesday. So we go back into Idaho. And I remember I'm trying to find a hotel. I'm trying to book a hotel. And the first hotel, I'm like, man, this hotel's like $400. And I'm like, and Glenn's like, oh, it shouldn't be $400. And I didn't. And I finally find, and then I go to book a hotel, and that hotel, by the time I go to book it, it says, oh, this hotel is sold out. I'm like, what is going on here? So I go to this airport hotel. It's a Marriott. And Glenn drops me off. I go into this hotel, and the hotel is filled with just people, and specifically kids, specifically boys. And they look like they're probably, I don't know, 7th, 8th grade, 12 years old or so. And so I'm in Idaho. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm from Oxnard, California, Northern California. I'm across the country. I go in and I look around and I see a kid with a hat that says Oxnard on it. And I'm like, there's no way. And then I go into my room. I go out to dinner. I come back from dinner. These kids and their parents, they're all hanging out eating and socializing. And a couple more of them have like Oxnard hats, the Oxnard shirts. And I'm just thinking to myself, there's no way. And then I go into my room, I sleep. I wake up the next morning and they're all having breakfast, and I'm going to have breakfast too. And I'm sitting down, they all have like Oxnard hats, Oxnard shirts, Oxnard jerseys. To get a free copy of the 12-step guide that I created for you, click on the link in the description below. And it turns out I start talking to them, and sure enough, these kids from Oxnard, California, they're 7th and 8th grade. They're 12 and 13 years old. They're there for I think it was a soccer, some sort of a soccer tournament. And I sat there at breakfast just eating, and I just cried. There are no coincidences. Everything happens exactly the way it's supposed to. And I remember talking with my friend after, and he said, well, what did you like? What happened? What did you think of the experience? What did you realize? What was your realization as a result of that encounter? And I realized they're just boys. They're just little boys. And so I think my experience was that these terrible kids that were just evil and caused me so much pain and so much trauma. But then at that moment, I realized they're just little boys. They're just living life. And there's no reason for me to have, I don't know, the feelings that I was having about these terrible kids from.
Well, it's interesting, Tim, because what you're talking about and what you didn't mention is that so much of the work that we do is going back to those parts of us as younger selves, not necessarily that inner child work with that little broken one, but many ages through the years, and really revisiting those ages of ourselves. And so in our work together, we'd gone back and found those 12, 13-year-old. And so that boy was a part of you that day at that hotel in a way that it wouldn't have even affected, maybe who knows what, but it was especially that day because you'd found that boy and he was alive and well in you from the work that you'd done. And so it was a reparative experience, which is what Terra Vista is about, is how do we begin to lay new safety tracks, if you will, that's the language I use, to begin to be safe, because in your mind, this 12-year-old was so overwhelmed by the bullying of these boys that it had shaped the way that you felt about yourself, your world, and to be able to right size, if we will use that language, right size the memory, the experience, and you as being a man versus being able to take care of or create safety for this 12-year-old, 13-year-old that still lived in you, that believed that the world was unsafe. Right. In those moments, God, the universe, whatever miraculous thing happened, you were able to see in those moments that the trauma had distorted some things in your mind that made you still feel unsafe about an experience that they were just 12-year-old boys, but in your mind, it was very different than that. Right. And so how beautiful for you to be able to say they're just boys.
Right. They're just boys. And I'm safe.
And
I'm safe. And I think one of the exercises or the homework that you gave us was to go back to the place where I lived when I was a 12-year-old boy and eat some of the food or the candy or the whatever and just get back into that environment. And I'm kind of like, I really don't need to, because that environment came to me.
That's right.
I don't, and it was just such a, gosh, it was so, man, I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe that these kids from Oxnard were across the country in the same hotel. What?
That's incredible. I hear stories like this often, which is so amazing to me, because the work just keeps on going and God or the universe just keeps on giving you what you need to continue healing as you make the decision to heal, as you make the decision to face the things that feel so incredibly frightening because the trauma makes it feel insurmountable. But the work just keeps going. As you said, I was talking to a guy the other day who said he was in New York City at a cafe, had done the work with the boys and some guy that was waiting on him. in and or was waiting on him and came to him, and they started talking, and he had a credit card or debit card from the bank that was in that town. And they both started talking about being from that town. And then they started talking about where they lived. And then they figured out that they lived in the same house. And this boy had the same bedroom.
Wow.
Guy who'd gone through the program. And this was not, it was years and years later. And both of them had moved out of the house. And they struck up a friendship that was beautiful for both of them in working on the things that came from trauma.
If you got value from this video, if you heard what you needed to hear, be sure to like it. Comment if you've got a question or you have something to say. Subscribe to the channel. Camelback Recovery provides treatment services for people struggling with mental health, mental illness, addiction, alcoholism, whatever it may be. So if you or a loved one is struggling and you need some guidance and you need some direction, reach out to us. Our contact information is down below, or you can go to our website, camelbackrecovery.com, whether it be detox, inpatient treatment, sober living, recovery coaching, sober companion services, whatever it may be. Like I said, we can either help you or make sure that you get sent in the right direction. We help people all over the country, all over the world for that matter. I'll see you on the next video.